This episode of the AI XR podcast is brought to you by our friends at Zapper. If you're in the XR space, you've probably felt the pain of juggling different tools, vendors, and platforms just to get an AR or VR project off the ground. It's exhausting, and it can really slow you down. That's where Zapper comes in. They've built a complete suite of tools and creative services all under one roof to make creating immersive experiences not just possible, but practical. Their next gen 3D web tool, Mattercraft, is a game changer for building immersive experiences for headsets, smartphones, and AR, VR, and WebXR. It combines the power and flexibility of the 3JS rendering engine with a rich visual editor, making it super intuitive and easy for designers and developers to use. Put simply, you get the creative freedom of a powerful 3D engine with none of the headaches. So if you're ready to take your immersive projects to the next level, head over to zapper.com and see what they can do for you. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink with Ted Shilowitz and Roni Abovitz. It's the AIXR podcast on May 2nd, 2025. Good morning, guys.
Good morning. How's everybody?
Morning.
We got a great guest, Dr. Joan Bajorek. She's the author of Your AI Roadmap. And I think this is going to be a fun one, guys, because her book is about, you're a regular person with a job and kids, and you're busy and you're hearing about this AI stuff, and you're terrified about it and the economy. And you don't want to just sit there waiting for fate to deal your hand. What do you do? So I think I don't know who reads books anymore, but that is an important topic. And so it's good that we're talking about it. So in the news this week, corporate earnings. And it looks like the big winners here are Microsoft and Meta. So, Meta's doing well. It must be that people are not afraid enough of a recession to stop advertising.
Do you think part of it is the continued sort of departure of X based on the Elon sort of government linkage and Meta just taking the draft wind of all that and picking up all those advertisers? I don't know if that's a real thing or not.
What makes X weaker makes Meta stronger.
Yeah, maybe.
Also, I think Instagram is incredibly powerful now as a way to discover products. I think there's an entire generation right now that this is they don't even go to Amazon. This is how they find things.
Yeah, Instagram and TikTok have become the new commerce, right?
It works. By the way, and TikTok is under duress too.
Yeah.
So, where's the safe place? It sounds odd, but the safe place to go is probably Meta right now.
So, yeah, they're vacuuming up, obviously, in the war for attention. They're vacuuming up at this point a lot more than network television does. Let's talk about Apple. Apple, their earnings were okay, but they are in trouble with the Justice Department. And so is Google. Google is already guilty. They could break Google up. Which honestly, as a Google shareholder, and I've said this numerous times, I think Google should be broken up. I think YouTube should be a separate company. I think AWS should be separate from Amazon. So anytime that happens and increases competitiveness, it's great for innovation and the economy.
Well, this may be my naivete about economics, but a breakup of an entity like Google, where YouTube and Google become separate, but they're still within the same ownership pie, or Amazon and AWS break up, but they still kind of have the same ownership pie. Isn't it actually more beneficial for those companies to drive revenue through sort of separate channels, but all sort of funnels up to the same ownership pie? I mean,
well, it'll be the same ownership pie initially, right? That's what happened with the breakup of the Bell system into the baby bells. Right. Everybody got a little stock in everything. Right. And that turned out to be incredibly lucrative.
So that's what I'm saying. Maybe it's actually a good economic move for those companies to sort of slice and dice.
I hate when I think your government's messed up, and I think let disruptors disrupt, and I think there's a lot of different ways for a Google and YouTube to fail on their own. It's the TikToks, it's Microsoft, it's OpenAI's. There's enough going on that I can't see that they're so dominant that others can't get in there. And there's so many things happening right now with AI that it's hard to say that they've got this like secure lock in the future that they don't have to fight things off. So I feel
That
like
was that was the argument in court, by the way, that Sundar
I think
Pichai
it's
made.
true.
Yeah.
It's true. He's actually under duress. I don't think he's a monopolist anymore. I think he's under the gun from a lot of people. I think they're in real trouble on many levels. Um, I mean, if you just look at what happened to things, something that it got invented in their company that boosted OpenAI into a $300 billion company, an existential threat to Google, started in their own company. So I think they're just leave them alone and they'll shoot themselves in their own foot. You know what I mean? You don't need the government's help on that. They're doing a good job of that. I mean, think about the all the inventors of attention is all you need are not at the company and have created the biggest threats to Google outside of Google without any government help. So we don't. I mean, they're just going to like fall all over the place. I just think let the market do what it's doing. There's enough creative disruption. Anyway, that's my take. I think like and again, if we had a very finely tuned government, maybe, but this thing is like a mess too. So I don't know.
So
That's a long black hole, Charlie.
moving on to more mess, Apple, um,
There
also
you go.
guilty of uncompetitive practices. This goes back, we've been talking probably for 5 years about Epic v. Apple and the App Store dispute. And Apple lost the dispute and they were supposed to dial back their practices. And they went from like taking 30% to taking 27%. So, like, technically, they kind of and apparently there was, a deliberate attempt to obstruct and not exactly obey the order, at least according to the judge. So she's recommended contempt charges to the Justice Department, and it's a bad look. They also reported earnings, and they're doing okay despite the tariff situation. But this legal thing really puts them in jeopardy of losing control of parts of their empire and
Yeah,
their ecosystem.
the way I'd sort of verbalize it is Apple essentially tried to play the loophole game, right? They tried to sort of work around it, kind of bury it, still run those numbers to their profitability and their goal set that they want to deliver as much value back to their shareholders as they can. And their lawyers said, I think you can probably pull this off if you do this. And a judge said, no, not quite. It's kind of interesting.
Yep. So elsewhere in the news, before we get to our guest, Elon's X Holdings, the scam meant to vacuum up his failure with X into a company that is still growing at light speed, which is XAI. So he's combined the companies, and now he is raising $40 billion, which would be the tied with OpenAI for the largest private fundraise in history.
Guys, this is a snit between him and Sam Altman played out in the court of the whole public market. I mean, think about it. Like, he tries to buy OpenAI, he's going to raise the same amount. This is like two guys that really, really dislike each other, but maybe secretly are like bros. Like, who knows what the hell's going on? But it's crazy. Isn't this crazy? Like, he raises 40, I got to raise 40. It's like,
oh wait, I'm sorry. The number is 20. I said 40.
sorry.
Correction. Okay. Pardon me.
Well, that's nothing. I mean, $20 billion, like a drop. But I mean, isn't this it's just bananas? You know what's going on? Like, I have to build more NVIDIA clusters than you, right? That's kind of this like I have to build it. It's like I'm building Empire State Building. I'm building a taller building. I'm building it. Like, what is going on here?
Yeah, I mean, we've sort of always seen a version of this with captains of industry, that the sort of juvenile behavior. I mean, we've seen it with the media empires. We've seen it with now tech empires are effectively media empires.
And we saw it with the railroads.
Yeah, I mean, it's like kids in the schoolyard.
This is the railroads. This is the railroad fight, the infrastructure railroad fight of intelligence. That's what they're fighting over.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys are OpenAI users. Are you ChatGPT users? Because I use it every day. It really is now in my workflow. And
it's also in all your personal stuff.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I use
it's hoovered up everything about you, Charlie. At this point,
it does know everything about me.
Are you using it on your own laptop?
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's hoovering everything about.
Oh yeah, but and it's got all my personal information. It knows me, and they upgraded it, so they turned it into a flattering little bitch. And I
Yeah,
kept,
it got a
holy,
lot of worldwide negative response from people saying it's too nice, it's acquiescing too much. This was their latest
and
version,
it
and they pulled
supports
back.
the worst possible ideas. Here's a refinement of your fantastic idea. No, it's a dumbass idea. That's why I'm asking for your help.
It's sort of the same thing. Like I've seen a lot of examples on the visual side of various AI tools. When someone puts an example, a picture of their face or an image, and then asks a very simple prompt, make an exact copy of this, and then they'll run 40 versions of it. And you watch what happens. It distills into this bizarre. Remember the first Will Smith eating spaghetti AI craziness, and then of course now
Yeah.
AI does a perfect Will Smith. This is the opposite of that. This is if you keep asking the AI the same question, it will try and find a way to get to the answer by distilling it down to a worse version of what it was last time. It's fascinating. There's plenty of examples you can look at online.
So, well, the more it knows me, the better it is. That's all I can say. And I like it knowing me. I don't like it being a weird, flattering. So, punchline. Sorry,
Charlie,
let's
this is
get
like
right
the
to it.
movie
They
Her,
fixed it.
though.
They
It's
fixed it.
it's having that intimate relationship with like a
Yeah.
billion people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the movie Her comes up a lot, and I showed it to my students, minus the extra naughty part, because I get very uncomfortable with them. I mean, it's just the age that we're in.
Hmm.
You know, 20 years ago, I would have shown it all the way through, and nobody would have thought anything of it.
By the way, isn't that such a prescient film? Not only the AI and the mobile
my
part, but the AR game with the little weird.
Oh, so good. I mean,
Sure.
watching that movie is aging well.
Yeah, yeah.
That movie is aging well.
It
Harbinger.
nailed it, right?
So
It's
Harbinger.
anyway, the punchline to this story is they're dialing that back. They've got a new version out that is a little smarter sounding than the flattering little bitch. So thank you, OpenAI. I think a lot of people. I think they must have noticed it. They're obviously
They did. They
just
pulled
using
back on it. They
yeah.
publicly stated that they're going to retool it.
So I don't know if you guys remember Jonathan Friedman of Super Social, which was a company making spatial entertainment and advertising experiences on Roblox. They have merged with Super League.
Yeah.
So, and Super League is a straight up producer of entertainment on Roblox. So it shows you some of these Roblox related companies, are really making money now and getting bigger.
I think that's proving the metaverse is an unevenly distributed thing. It's not a single thing. It's like a cluster of little mini metaverses, right? Just like in the universe, there's galaxies and planets. There's not the metaverse right now. It's just little clusters of things. So, but it's happening. Like Neil's vision of Snow Crash, you could say some of that is come to life in Epic, in Roblox, not necessarily in Meta, but it's happening in other places.
Yeah, it's just not fully sort of instantly linked without any layers, right? There's
Correct.
business layers, economic layers, strategic layers to
Correct.
keep things so that they can generate an economy from it, right? So it's
Correct.
and there's plenty of open source tapestry that allows cross pollination to do these things. It's interesting.
So
That is indeed the metaverse today.
So I dropped a story on Monday that I worked on a lot, and I interviewed a lot of people, trying to divine what is happening in Hollywood and what is going to happen to movies and popular entertainment. So it was a very personal story for me. I feel part of my role has always been kind of a truth teller. And we're at a moment in Hollywood, and Ted, I think you'd agree with this. So I don't know if you guys read this story or not, but Ted, I think you would agree with this that there is no question that we are entering a new golden age of Hollywood, which will be achieved largely through cost cutting and through other advantages that AI provides.
Yes.
And while this is going on, of course, there will be a rise of synthetic AI, completely made by AI or guided by AI on social media. So, that's the premise. We're about to enter a new golden age, but it's going to come at a big human cost.
I disagree slightly. I'm not
wait,
sure
let me
if
just finish the premise. And although Hollywood is going to win the battle, they're going to lose the war because the real battle is for people's attention, not for low budgets.
So Charlie, here I'm not sure it's a golden age. I think it's an age. That's the only part. An age is happening, But I think golden age, at least for cinema, is where you had amazing creatives that you guys have met. But it's like the Spielbergs and Scorseses who were able to make that vision happen at a level of quality and story that just blows your mind. Is this new era that, or is it just a bunch of weird shit that grabs your attention for 10 seconds? Like, which is like the audience attention span's diminished. Can you hold a
Well,
story behind? That's
that's
really a bigger
social.
question.
That's what you choose to follow on social media. If you're interested in that, they're going to show you a lot of that. That's just the way the algo works. So, and anyway, I think it's an interesting topic. I want everybody to take a look at the story. Let me know what you think. If you guys have read it or could read it and give me some of your feedback, it would be helpful because I'm going to write more stories on this topic because look, I live in LA. All my friends are in the business. So, and I think, again, James Cameron joins the board of Stability AI and he runs around saying AI is the greatest thing. It's not going to cause any disruption other than making my big films bigger. And it's a fucking lie. And he knows it's a fucking lie, but no one in Hollywood could say this.
Are we allowed to
Well,
say that on our podcast?
Sure, of course. We could say
so
anything.
so Charlie, so I did obviously indeed read the article. It was very complimentary and sent you notes back saying
You
I
did,
think
thank
this
you.
is
That's right.
one of
You
the
did.
best pieces of writing that you have done around the industry because it crystallized a lot of stuff that everybody knows and find it hard to verbalize, and you put it in, a page and a half of a column, and it was very well thought out. And I, recommend it to a lot of friends that are in this business. I think your perspective and Roni's perspective is probably somewhat similar to mine. I always take a long view of these things, right? So I was sort of reflecting the entertainment business against the automotive business. And if we think when we were kids, the big three, right? So there were the big three that owned the automotive business, owned the economics of the automotive business, owned the branding of what automotives were, right? And then there were interesting exotic car companies from other countries like Ferrari and Maserati and and Bentley and places and Rolls-Royce. But the big three owned the business, right? There's a reflection on Hollywood that's very similar to that. The big seven owned the business, right? And the business of Hollywood got interfered by a lot of other players when things became more commonly used and the ability to build these things, to make content, started to spread to a wider focus. And then you had the Japanese car makers and the European car makers and the Korean car makers. And you can tie a lot of similarities to what's going on with what we call big Hollywood and the YouTube revolution and now the AI revolution, which kind of leads into our guest Joan a little bit. But it's a very good article to read, Charlie.
Joan, a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for joining the show. It's great to see you.
Hello, folks.
I'm introducing you. Might turn up your mic just tish there. These are my co-hosts, Ted and Roni. I looked at your book and I said to the guys at the beginning of the podcast, I was looking forward to speaking with you because, we talk about AI at a high level and we don't often pause and say, here's someone with a family who's going to a job, who's a regular person, who's really busy. And, there's an existential threat to the economy hanging over them, right? There are going to be job losses associated with AI. And they're thinking, well, I don't use AI. What's going to happen to me? Right? Because 98% of the people have never seen it in the workplace. So this is a moment of kind of existential dread, and you can wait for it to happen to you, or you can try and take proactive steps to protect yourself and your career and your family. So I thought it was a very timely book in that way. And you're speaking to an anxiety that I see in many people, including my own kids who are not in the tech business.
Yep, I think as someone who works in tech, it's wild to see that we talk about, it's going to have societal impacts. And that's literally where it usually stops. But here in Seattle, there's research about how many people are experiencing layoff anxiety, which previously Harvard Business Review said 50%. I joke here in Seattle, it's 80%. But my book really speaks to what can you do? Like, are you going to put your head in the sand and just be anxious? Like that, I don't think that does anything. So yeah, my book, or I'm glad you checked it out, Charlie. Actions to expand for your career, money, and joy. Like, what can you actually do? Like, what is data driven? So
So, Joan, for our listeners, give us a little background on yourself, your path, your journey, what led you to write this book, the steps along the way, so we can all get a little level set, all the listeners around the world that are listening to the podcast. Kind of want to know who you are, why you did this, and then you can sort of maybe drill down into what the book is. But if we start with the third question, we never get to the first two questions. So we always kind of got to remember no one knows about you other than,
Thank you, Ted.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yes. Well, hey, folks. Greetings from Seattle, wherever you are. My name is Joan. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an investor. I am a now best-selling author, I'm delighted to say. But the reason specifically for the book is I myself, despite a PhD and building said systems of AI on the back end, have been in 2 large-scale AI layoffs. The first one was 30% of the company in a day.
Wow. Ouch.
And yeah, ouch is
Are you
right.
able to tell us what that company is, or do you have to keep that secret?
I prefer not to.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's the concept is
problem.
that there are many of them. I don't think it's anything personal. Yes, but I don't need to throw them under the bus. The point being, though, that I am not alone in this at all. Like, I'm one who's like comfortable saying, like, hey, I've been in a layoff. There's life after layoff.
Because of
And-
AI or because of other reasons?
Well, I mean, I would say a lot of all of the above, Ronnie. I mean, I don't know that I can pull apart or like Duolingo recently being like, oh, we actually are, putting AI instead of humans. Like a lot of companies are already doing that, and a lot of companies are dogfooding. So yes,
So
and
this is a personal story for you. This is something that
very
you have
personal.
gone through. People in Seattle in the region there that have gone through it, and this has sort of led you to this next step in your career.
Yeah, and I've continued. I mean, I've become an investor. I've landed jobs in the VP level. I've built wealth for myself. I talk about in my book. I now have 22 income streams, whereas my first layoff, I had really one income stream. And so people in my DMs are like, "How did you do it? Like, tell me more. Share the secrets." And so this book is really a lot of answers behind the scenes of how I recommend folks do that.
Is it about preparing people who are not necessarily savvy for what is inevitably coming and how to get yourself geared up for it instead of just having it happen? It's like evolutionary adaptation. If you don't adapt, there's a lot of biologic precedent for non-adapting creatures don't really make it. So is it sort of like how to adapt to the future so that you can survive? Like what's sort of the motivation?
Yeah, what's the motivation? I mean, I certainly people come to me and say, "Hey, technical stuff. Like I want an AI 101, like send me there." I think there's a lot of resources. I actually have my own podcast, not as cool as this one, called Your AI Roadmap, where I bring in leaders that are building from Microsoft and Google and Amazon and stuff. This book, though, is really about like help me save my career. Is like the first half of the book, future proof your career. So really data driven, boring stuff, personal branding, networking. The people you know are the ones that help you get the job. I got tons of research we can dive into if you want, but it's really that humanness that helps you stay in the game, I'd say. And so just helping people nuts and bolts, step by step. If you want to stay in your field, if you want to keep a 9 to 5, here's how I'd recommend you do it.
So you have a thesis or multiple theses around AI and what AI is going to do and is doing to society and humans. I see that you have a speaking website. Your path is probably similar to both me and Charlie. And Roni, I think, is probably does it too, but much more on the entrepreneurial side, where you take your own sort of life experience and personal brand and you monetize on that by putting yourself out there and getting booked on presentations and speeches and panels and whatnot. And that obviously, like you said, you've got 22 streams of income. That's probably one of them, or maybe one of the main ones. But do you want to tell us about your thesis and your book and where it all sort of lays out for people?
Sure. Thesis. Well, I mean, the main part of the book is, I guess, if there's one thesis, take action would be the primary thesis. For the, like, if there are 3 steps, if people are zoning out, like, come back. The 3 steps I'd recommend for you is the personal brand, setting it up, Ted. Some of us have a personal brand and have for years. Some of us have been working in corporate, hiding behind the scenes, doing the work, and have no public facing, period.
Right.
Headshot doesn't even look like you anymore, right? You're networking. Are you going to industry events? Are you participating? Are you going to that happy hour where you meet the next person, you connect with your old colleague? I know a lot of people who are not doing that. So that's kind of the flywheel on the career side. And the third one being your personal finances. I came from a home where it was super taboo to talk about money. You make money and you shut up about it. But how to stabilize your own internal, most Americans do not have an emergency fund, period. And so if if you have a huge job loss, that could be yourself, your family overnight. So I talk really nuts and bolts about, I share all my income streams and I share what they are and nuts and bolts of all kinds of fun stuff. But also like basic bare bones on investing, 101 setting up your finances if you never got that education. So I'm not a financial wealth planner. I have disclaimers in my book and I'll say them here. My lawyer would love me to say, but like things I wish I'd known 2 years ago. If I'd known this when I was 18, woo, I'd be wealthier. Damn.
Okay, well, you now have to tell us what that thing is, having set it up
Or
so
some of
well.
those things.
Some
Yeah.
of those things. Yeah. So, they're basic, boring things. I like.
No, you said
Oh,
things you wish you knew
yeah.
first 2 years ago, and then when you were starting out. So first
Sure.
start with two things you wish you knew 2 years ago, aside from where the stock market would be.
Oh, yeah. We're back in time. An emergency fund. The first time I got laid off, which was a little bit more than that, having money parked aside for a bad day, rainy day, in a high yield savings account. My high yield savings account pays me to like I leave my money in there. A lot of people don't even know what a high yield savings account is, don't have an emergency fund. I have friends who've been on the job market 15 to 21 months, folks. So really having that, I mean, just an emergency fund, Charlie. I know that doesn't sound that exciting. But
I just think we underestimate the difficulty of
Mm,
when you're raising a family. What it really costs. So it's very hard for a lot of people to set much aside
mhm.
every month, and then your car needs a major repair and it's $8,000, and there goes your emergency fund. But yeah, I mean, I think people should have 6 months set aside, but I think most people have a very, very hard time accumulating that amount of cash.
Joan,
And
can I ask you? Oh, sorry, go on.
please. Oh, well, I was just going to respond. Yeah, Charlie, I'm not flippant that like people are
Yeah.
making money and then like how do you squirrel away that money? I really don't mean to be. Like that's the concept of expanding your wealth. A lot of people think I'm just in this one 9 to 5. This is what I got. I'm maxed out. That is so not the case. Bringing in other income streams, as Ted mentioned, if public speaking is a part of your income streams. Like I had all these side things that I wasn't monetizing, and by
Mhm.
monetizing and diversifying my income streams, different cash flow, different opportunities. So, Charlie, if they're in a place where $8,000 is hard to save up, what other things can you do to bring in income? That's what the questions I start asking.
Right. That's like a Gary Vaynerchuk thing on how you can start out with $10.
Expand. Yeah.
He was like, go to yard sales and look for anything with a tag on it that says tie, and then sell it on eBay.
Mm.
Oh,
He
yeah.
said, and then when you accumulate $100, you put it in the stock market and keep going.
Mm.
That's Gary's advice. It's very down to earth advice where you don't have any money to invest, but at least you have some time that you can invest. Here's another question, because that people hear often, right? That they hear, people are going to lose their jobs to people who can do their jobs with AI. So how do I go from somebody who's doing my job normally to doing my job with AI? What are the steps there? How do I learn about it? What are the issues of using it inside of the company, and so forth?
And so forth. I mean, one of the easiest ways you could do that. So if someone's working in finance or healthcare or whatever, go to an LLM and ask it, what are the 5 tools in my field that I could upskill in today? Most Americans haven't even opened up ChatGPT. Pew Research has data on this. Most Americans, 70 to 80%, have heard of ChatGPT. 14 to 20 some percent have actually tried it. So just opening up ChatGPT.
Which is crazy when you consider that ChatGPT has 1 billion users.
And they keep more and more users, but I'm telling you,
But they obviously are not all in the United States.
no, totally. Well, and I go to, I'm like, oh, here in Seattle, of course, everyone's prototyping and playing. I go to family events. I mention it. I talk to an aunt or uncle who's like, oh yeah, uh-huh. I'm like, okay. I've started meeting some of those people outside of my network who are thinking or aren't thinking about these things and trying them out. So just finding the 5 tools in your sector, playing with them, seeing how they could help, being an entrepreneur, raising your hand at work, being like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this could really help us. This could boost revenue. Can we talk
Mm-hmm.
about this? those are steps I'd take at any workplace.
Joan, question for you. It sounds like a lot of the guidance are for, knowledge workers, white collar workers. What would you tell people who are in the blue collar thing, who've been told in the past what you need to do is ascend to become a knowledge worker?
Mm.
I actually now tell everyone, including graduating students, you should go the other direction and become a blue collar worker, because I feel like blue collar work is going to be much more valuable and higher paid, and white collar work is going to be largely taken over
My
by
my
AI.
niece-in-law was a film editor. She was an assistant editor. And you can make a nice living if you work 8 or 9 months a year. But she was down to working like the equivalent of 1 month. So she went back to school and became a journeyman electrician. Now she is a fully licensed electrician. She's a tiny little thing. And now she's a master electrician. And those people make six-figure incomes.
Yeah. So, Joan, what's your advice to folks who are like, I'm blue collar and I want to go to knowledge work, or I'm a knowledge worker?
Or
Like, do you
people who
think,
don't want to go to college,
or
can't
don't go to,
afford to.
do you think
Yes.
that the AI augmented knowledge worker is safe, or you're much safer being that journeyman electrician? Like, what's your take on like the
Mhm.
next 10 years, given the intent of many of the big AI companies, like which you probably know from the inside, a couple of them.
Yeah, I mean, headcount's expensive. I think we're going to continue to see a drop in number of jobs. I literally get high schoolers in my DMs asking, should I go to college? This is not hyperbolic whatsoever. Um, I don't think that a blue collar job or a knowledge worker job with AI is like any way better or not. I think that financial education, knowing your FI number, your financial independence number, and getting to it to protect yourself and your family is the game right now, the way I see it. Ronnie, I definitely see people who, electricians, plumbers, those jobs are not going to go out anytime soon, and you can make a chunk of change. I just, yeah, I learned what plumbers make recently. I was like, wow, dang, okay. And everyone needs their, toilets and plumbing to work, right? So I do think though that at least in my sector, AI engineers can be making a wild amount of money.
Matt and Trey from South Park fame did an amazing send up of this in one of their episodes.
Yeah,
That if you know the episode, it's fantastic. Where they're like all these sort of knowledge workers just have no idea how to do stuff, right? So the kind of regular folk become extremely wealthy, and then all of the trappings they start buying expensive cars and living the way that the previous elite lived, and it's this whole. It's fantastic. It's a great
totally.
send up, and it's so it's funny because it's so true, right? It's sort of amazing.
Well, and that's what my construction guy who helped me do my fence, he can put any dollar sign he wants. He's like, all these tech people just keep hiring me and no one's joining my field.
Right.
And he gets to work with whoever he wants, whatever dollar sign, and he does amazing work. I'm not going to tell you his name. I got to keep him under lock. But
So, what do you tell a UW grad getting their master's in computer science? They're graduating at the end of like this spring or something. What do you tell that person? Go back and be a plumber. Like, what would you tell them what to do?
and see, this is each path is so individual. Exactly. I don't try to make pan statements like that. If you are already invested in computer science, I would recommend you get that full-time job, you get some logos on your CV, and you get those income streams going on the side. Monetize, monetize, monetize. Get ready to hit your FI number and make a plan. Because I think as I see a lot here in Seattle, at least, people fall into this lifestyle. Let's get another car. Let's get a bigger house, blah, blah, blah. And they're still living paycheck to
So, do you
paycheck.
think everyone should be a portfolio person in income, like
Mhm.
like a mutual fund? Like, you can't just have a job. You have like side quests, and like you have just like, I'm an Uber driver and I have a social media thing and an e-commerce thing, and I do that. Like, are you thinking that people should really just like distribute their risk by having just multiple like side quest jobs and maybe a main one? But is that a safer bet? Is that what you're sort of thinking?
I really, no one needs 22 income streams. I just was writing them out and couldn't believe how many I had, to be frank with you. I think 2 to 6 is a healthy number. I
Wow.
think some of them passive, some of them active. There are people who have that one day job that's paying really well, and they're not sleeping well at night because they have that layoff anxiety. So if you know there's something you could scale up on the side, you got a passion, you could monetize at the golf course, whatever it is, it's your passion. But I think that would help you if there are big volatile shifts you weren't expecting.
I don't think people have been thinking like that at all. Like it's like get a job, not have multiple streams to distribute your risks. If one fails, there's another one. It's actually really smart. That's very cool.
So would you maybe say that AI is bringing a new renaissance of freelance culture? Is that a good way to describe it? Because a lot of industries, certainly the industry I was in for the bulk of my career, while I had jobs at periods of times at studios, I was sort of always kind of freelancing and looking for the next experience and next thing I could build on, right? And journalists certainly, production workers, creative workers, art directors, anybody that's really in a creative field
Right.
lives kind of a freelance life.
Right, because
Sometimes you take
right, because like I'm a producer, podcaster, consultant, adjunct,
yeah, educator, et
author.
cetera, et
Yeah,
cetera.
I
Right.
mean, there are a lot of income streams. In my case, they're all shitty income streams.
But they all add up to a good one,
They do.
right?
Well, they do because I made money when I was young and cool.
Well, I think the concept, I mean, Ted, I think it's from the personal side and from the enterprise side, because what I see is headcount being cut, and let's just do project based. We could get a contractor in to do just a little bit of this, that, and the other. And so if you are the person getting that contract, this, that, and the other, you may not be landing that next big FTE or even want it. I recently was asked about a really cool gig that I'm qualified for. It's 60 to 80 hours a week,
Yeah,
period.
you don't want to commit that much time to
I'm
one thing.
like, I got
Hmm.
a wonderful thing that I'm building here, you know?
Hmm.
And so that doesn't match my 2 to 6 recommendation I'd recommend to anybody else.
Right.
And 80 or anyway,
But you
most
did
times,
hit on the terminology because you use the word gig, right? And there's a
yeah,
term we call the gig economy or gig workers that are, it's sort of
literally.
the same word as freelance, just a more modern word, of picking up things when they can derive a healthy amount of income and not take up all of your waking hours of work to do that. And you're not providing it all to one company or one sort of outlet, right? So that's gig, that's the gig economy, which of course is a huge part of our working economy around the world now. It's fascinating.
Right. Well, and I can't say that I recommend gig work to anybody. And I think as Charlie was mentioning, like getting some capital in and using that capital for other things to scale is absolutely like I don't know that one could be an Uber driver and make the type of wealth I'm talking about to take care of themselves. Or just I haven't seen those multiples work out. So how you get capital in, how you leverage it, how you scale it. I actually cover all of this in my book. I think it's chapter 14, but like how to scale to 1 million in revenue and selling a product and keep, find a product, build it yourself or find somebody else's and scale it and selling it. I believe is a huge part of the game.
So Joan, would
So
you
it's
call it like I think there's a gig, but there's also like being a micro entrepreneur, right? You're not doing a startup where you have 100 people, but you are like a startup with like multiple products and services and like just don't be owned by anybody. Have your own little thing, and you don't need to be $100 billion a year thing, but you could be really happy with like a kind of micro owned business. Is it something like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think I love entrepreneurship, if that's not obvious from what we're talking about. But I think just thinking outside the box, like one of the examples I give is there's a donut shop around the block from me, and they are selling donuts for a very high price point. They sell out every day, gourmet donuts. There's a line outside the block. The person is working from, very early until like noon. And that's the thing.
And
It's
not going to be
donuts.
displaced by AI. AI, like they can
Who's
use
gonna
AI and they could use
yeah.
AI to be their finance department, their marketing department. They could leverage AI, but their product is not getting replaced by AI.
Exactly, Ronnie. I think that's the game. Being efficient, still bringing in revenue, and hopefully doing what you love. I really believe that team loves their gourmet donuts, and their Insta game is very good. So, but that's just one example. The plumbing example, electrician example, but like it doesn't have to be that knowledge worker. I think that knowledge worker is a piece of the puzzle, optimizing things, but it's part of this ecosystem.
One more question for you. What you're describing is an insight that 99.99% of the country has no idea what's going on. And there's like a mass upskilling and culture shift and educational shift. And I feel like students are just like lemmings coming out of high school and college, like nothing's happening. And the shift is really big, like a meteor to take out the dinosaurs. How does what you're describing become like more systemic? Because you're kind of like, hey, dinosaurs, the meteor's coming. Let's go to the cave. And this is how you survive the meteor. And everyone's like, what? But like if you don't read your book, for example, a lot of people around the country will have no idea what's happening and they'll be laid off and angry. So I mean, it sounds like there's a systemic shift. You're running on with your own flag, shouting about it in a good way. How do you think the country takes this on systemically?
Oh gosh, education in the US? I don't know that I can
Maybe
fix
it's a
it,
wrong
Ronnie.
question for a
That's
Friday
a pretty
morning.
big one. I mean, my team would joke that Joe needs to be more famous. That's not necessarily the
This
case.
podcast will just boost you
Oh, yeah.
1,000x.
Boom,
Oh, yeah.
boom. Thank you.
You'll see a noticeable bump later this
At
weekend.
least two more people will
I,
be.
I, I I think it's just really important for young people to have hope. I'm doing this really cool manufacturing project with one of my customers, and I had no idea truly. I don't know, I guess enough young people in that age bracket from like 16 to 19 who did not get their first job, whether it's out of high school or college. That first rung
Yeah.
is being displaced, and the amount of
Yeah.
sad, they got socialized during COVID. These young people are really struggling, Ronnie. So I hope, I don't know if they find my book or they find some kind of like scale that side hustle. Like it doesn't need to be that full-time job as your first thing. Like there's so many cool opportunities of ways to make money that are different from the past.
I have to say that what I see, just anecdotally, is, and again, I'm Ted and I were talking about this a second ago because we're in a very specific place inside of a very specific business, and this is not happening to the entertainment business; it's happening to the whole world.
Mm.
But what I see is a lot of people frozen and angry and going through the 6 stages of grief. They're either in the anger stage or they have moved on to bargaining. But there are all those stages, and I think people may have to go through that in order to move on, in order to succeed in a different world than we live in today.
Yeah, well, something I'd say certainly that I'm experiencing is people don't get what I do, this quote unquote portfolio career. A lot of folks are like, why didn't you just get a job at Google, Joan? Like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I have this cool multifaceted thing going on. So I think there's a mindset shift that maybe needs to happen for different generations of what success looks like or looked like.
Mhm.
And that continues to be a point of friction in my life. But I truly believe, Charlie, that yeah, there might be stages of grief of what used to happen. But as to Ronnie's point, there's a systemic shift going on, and how that person can take care of themselves and their families and their communities, frankly, is so exciting to me. I see huge new opportunity that did not exist previously.
Can I ask you an empathy question?
Sure.
You're obviously super bright, adaptive, agile, on top of things. There is a very large percentage of the population who are just okay, C students, average, not really going to go anywhere, not as bright as you'd hope, and but they're people and they have families, but they may not have the spark or the ability. They're not all Michael Jordan, and you're describing like a lot of people like who are at the upper echelon that can adapt. There's a whole section of the country which I feel like will not have any of this skill set and are very dependent on like a framework that's been around for 100 years that's going away. What do we do there? I mean, what's always been on the table is like universal basic income, which is kind of like AI welfare. Is that going to be the case that like some echelon takes all the capital and it has to UBI like 80, 90% of the country? Like, what's your take on that? Because not everyone can adapt to what you're describing. The people who could need to do it right away. I totally agree with that. But what if you can't? What if you're just like, your lot in life was not this, and you're still a good person. You
Yeah,
still
I
have
mean, most
meaning,
people most people can't and don't want to be a public speaker.
or they can't do anything other than like a really basic job, and that job's going away, and they can't adapt. Like in evolution in Darwin, which is doesn't have a lot of empathy, that you're gone. But we're not like that. We're supposed to have like a social, justice and caring about people. What happens with those people who cannot adapt? What do we do?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, I know about universal basic income. I can't say I believe in it based on the people at the top, how much they do want to give back or legislation or otherwise. Sadly, I don't believe in it. I don't know if anyone else in this room would agree with me or not. Um, what would I say to that
So,
person
so
or
in
empathize?
evolution, the maladapters they go away.
Yeah.
So here, only a certain percentage could adapt, and then UBI is supposed to be the safety net or some kind of welfare system, which could be growing at an unprecedented rate. Coal mining jobs are not coming back. All these people are being lied to.
Mm.
There's not going to be this menial factory job because you're not going to do it for 50 cents an hour, and a robot and AI will do it for a penny a day. Like
And
those
not go to
jobs are not
sleep.
coming. Yeah, the jobs are not coming back,
Yeah.
and they've been lied to. All these people thinking somehow the 60s are coming back. It's not happening. So what do you do?
What do you do? I hope
This is
education.
maybe too much for a Friday morning.
Back to that.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
a
now
big,
we're
that's a
making,
zeitgeist psychological
now
question.
we're making a sci-fi dystopian food riot kind of film.
Yeah, I have hope for these people that they potentially find resources. I mean, most people in the United States that I know have access to Wi-Fi and a computer, even if it's their phone. And
Mhm,
so maybe they find time. I hope they can upskill and find
mhm,
resources.
mhm.
I mean, these days they're probably spending a ton of time on like TikTok and Insta. So maybe we need to put more entrepreneurship content on there. But I think there will be, I think it's going to be really, really hard. I think the next 5-10 years, especially for those folks, are going to be really troublesome as big jobs disappear more and more and get automated in the ways you just described. So it's a little bleak, but I really do have hope that that kid in Kansas can actually do really cool things with just a little bit enablement.
And that kid will save his family.
Literally, that's what I'm talking about. Yourself, your family, your community, those people who make it big, they give back, hopefully, right? So I hear you, Ronnie. That's my
I
biggest.
don't know what the answer is, but I it's something I think about a lot because
Yes, me too.
equipping people with tools. I mean, something that's really, really, I think, just evolutionary true about us as people. There's no guarantee we survive.
Yeah,
We have to adapt or we don't
yeah.
survive, and
but
that's like the law of physics and biology. And we are creating an evolutionary event to ourselves that does not guarantee most people cross that line. I think that's some
Yeah.
can. You're going, here's the equipment to pass it, and some percentage won't. And I feel like, but we've grown this other empathy to go like, okay, let me pick you up and carry you across the line, even though you can't. Whereas the dinosaur would be like, I'm going to eat the ones that fell over, and as the everything's burning down, they're like, and the little mammals are eating their eggs. It was quite horrible, right?
but
But we're
reading
supposed to be better as people, right?
but reading through the tea leaves a little bit about what Joan has been talking about for the last half hour is there's a core, correct me if I'm wrong here, Joan, but I think this is what I've read from your verbalizations, of understanding at a fairly young age the concepts of financial planning and financial wherewithal, and dropping into the idea
Yeah.
of becoming an investor yourself, regardless of the level that you can do it at. This is advice I give to every young person.
I
that
did.
work
You know
with.
what? And I'm going to add this. Ted's kids are younger than mine, and he can still do that. But this was a parenting mistake that Jane and I made. We should have imbued or carried out or insisted on more financial literacy, not just for our kids, but also for ourselves.
Yeah.
So we got to wrap up the show, Joan. It has been great having you on here. I think this was, as I said at the beginning of the show, a conversation we don't have often enough. We're all, in a way, we're always talking about ourselves and our business. And I think this book, which is called Your AI Roadmap, and your website and your blog and your radio show or your podcast is certainly something people should pay attention to. So thank you. One last thing, I still have AWE tickets. June, I believe it's 11th to 13th in Long Beach. These are $900 tickets. So if you want them, hit me up at cdfink@gmail or go to my website and fill out the mail form there. First come, first serve, of course. And thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next week.